Yeah.
Yep, I'll tell her, I'll hear him. From what? Okay.
So now, November 23rd, about a week later, 2024, State's Exhibit 307. What are we talking about here? What are the defendant and Marcy discussing?
This is where they're comparing the defendant to the Columbine shooter.
Okay. So the very first one that pops up is kind of funny. It's a picture of like an old living room, like looks like from the 70s or something. And it's a picture of you sitting beside, who is that? Dylan. Colton Dylan, but y'all are sitting beside each other, and it says they're talking about the Jake Eve. You know, let me type no idea.
I want to see it.
Yeah, I will.
That's crazy. Did you ever see like part of me and like one of the Columbine shooters?
Yeah.
We kind of look alike, like really.
So just to be clear, did he actually say, did you ever think you'd see me drawn with one of the Columbine shooters? Or see art of me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, maybe the State Exhibit 310, which is November 26th of 2024. This was around Thanksgiving. What's this call about?
I believe this one is also mentioning big dogs again.
The first one is, looks like just like a pistol sketch of different school shooters, Earl Mayer, Adam Dillon. Yeah. It looks, almost just looks like freehand sketching somebody did.
Right now, we're moving to State Exhibit 314, which is November 28th. Tell us what they're generally talking about here.
More about posting pictures.
Okay. And are they specifically talking about, in this one, the defendant wanting Marcy Gray to search on a particular area for him?
Yes.
Is that the Reddit mass killer site?
Yes.
Okay, you want me to search for what?
Go to r/mass killers.
Or,
Just actually type r/.
say that one more time.
Don't actually say r/, and search stuff. And then the stuff will pull up.
Okay.
You see it?
No.
You really just search it up.
I did.
So click on the search bar again, open the
Yeah.
top right, and
Yep.
search for my name.
Just Colt Gray. No R. Okay. Okay.
That's all.
Yes, and that's where I'm being. Okay, you want to just read off a couple? There's one that's just r/Colt Gray. There's one, the next one is r/insane people Facebook.
No, go to r/mass killers and search it up. Because if you're a sub, if you're on the sub page, you're searching up stuff in the sub.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, it didn't, when I typed in, our message, it didn't say
It's
that.
gonna pop up, r/mass killers is 185,000 members in the subreddit.
Okay, spell it. Matthew Burns. Okay, wait, that's different. I was trying it different. Killers. I thought you were saying masculars.
Killers.
That's not my fault. You're speaking clearly.
Yeah, you get some randomly going to tell you to search up masculine.
Okay, there's no.
Are you on the front page?
I'm on the list of posts.
Alright, look the search bar again up there,
Mhm.
and it's decided to say r/mass
Say that again. Okay, you
Say r/mass killers in the search bar.
got it.
Okay, so now, for the next day, November 29th, 2024, this is Exhibit 315. What are we talking about here?
This is when he is telling, his mom to tell his grandma to get her internet speed up, for her celebrity grandson.
And his grandmother's at Deborah Polhana.
It is, yes.
When Marcy is talking to the defendant, are there times where his grandmother's around and that you know she's around based on the conversation?
Yes.
Is that a lot of the time, some of the time?
Prior to, I believe, February of 2025, it was some of the time.
Children.
Are you typing it or what?
No, it's loading, taking.
Tell that news that her fucking celebrity grandson is going it up right there. No, yeah, really, you tell her. I'm tired of this shit, seriously.
All right, so now we've moved a couple of months. We're in January 27th of 2025. It's almost 6 months after the shooting. This is Exhibit 326. What are we talking about here?
They're referencing a couple of other, shooters as corny.
Okay, next one, 3 days ago, it says, now with his 2 new corny eye shooters, I'm starting to appreciate Colt more.
Oh, shit, bro. Corn, fucking shooters, bro.
Yeah, listen, yeah.
This is February 15th, 2025. This is Exhibit 328. What happens in this phone call?
This one call, they discuss, the district attorney's office knowing about their calls and that they need to, I guess, watch what they're saying.
Have you checked them off the post? It's been a while.
Yeah, so I gotta talk to you about that. So in court on Tuesday, the defense attorneys were discussing everything with my attorney, and apparently they said that the DA had given them audio and video of me talking to you about like school shooters and stuff like that. Even though, I mean, we haven't talked about anything, I don't think inappropriate, you know, but they're trying to say that I'm like encouraging you to commit murder and just ridiculous. Yeah, just ridiculous stuff.
That's just fucking retarded.
Yeah, it's so stupid. But, you know, of course, they probably have no idea what PCC is, none of that.
No.
So anyway, so
Regardless, we're going to
what am I saying? Tell me about
you give me a sugar pie, a hard candy with a Nazi symbol on the back.
Shut up. But anyways, I gotta be careful about what we talk about on the phone, I guess, because I mean, I don't know. I just gotta be careful about what we talk about going forward. I told my attorney, you know, that you had some friends on TCC that, you know, you were really close to you, and so I was just keeping y'all in contact, and I mean, nothing that was shared between y'all was inappropriate in any way whatsoever. So, just for the record, for the video that they're putting of us right now, I'm in no way encouraging my son to commit murder or any ridiculous stuff like that. He's extremely remorseful for what happened, but I'm the only person that he has on this earth right now. And I'm going to do whatever I can to have some sort of moment.
Oh, yeah, I say fuck you. Oh, some fucking, like,
Yeah,
out there, he's gonna be a fucking liberal trash garbage. Dickhead.
Thank you. So,
That shit is so fucking lame.
so yeah, but I hope y'all make sure that you share this conversation as well with anything else that you have, because y'all are wrong. I know y'all are wrong for that. So, anyways, hang on, because I think I have some messages from.
Yeah, let's just read the messages. I won't even take a look at those if it's gonna be that fucking animal about it.
Yeah, at least for now. Okay, so.
So in that phone call, when Marcy Gray is talking to the defendant about she was keeping in touch with his TCC friends, is that the Sniggles and the Mandy from Discord that he was talking about shootings with?
Yes,
And so from these phone calls as his peer, she is actually continuing to communicate with these people?
that's correct.
And is that on the defendant's behalf, like at his request?
Yes.
Okay. So now we're up to March 15th, a month after Ms. Gray indicated that they needed to stop discussing these types of matters. This is 2025, states at 3:30. What are they talking about here?
Wanting to know what the TCC is saying.
Like about him, I guess.
Yes.
Something I wanted to tell you is, you know, the pictures I took of you during the FaceTime thing,
Yeah.
and I sent to, Mandy.
Yeah.
Well, apparently she leaked them and they're out there. So that's
Remember,
not
I
funny.
told you to tell her about your relationship.
I did, but apparently she did it anyway, so.
No, I was the one who told you to tell her to release them.
Oh, she released them.
Yeah.
I was thinking I told her not to release them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that, then,
Remember not to leave the release the jail pictures of them, man.
yeah, now that you mention it, I remember.
How do you go out there?
Because I've seen them
Oh,
on, TCC.
really, what are they saying about?
They really haven't said anything specific about those pictures. It's like people have just started, like adding them to, you know, selfie,
Can we look at those real quick?
yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, those are the ones I want to release.
Okay, good. Well, that makes me feel better.
All right, so now we're going to move to the final phone call. And this is from May 6th of 2025. What happened on May 6th?
There was a court date.
Was it a court date for the defendant?
It was, yes.
And are they kind of talking about what people are saying about
Yes.
the defendant after that court date?
Yes, they are.
This is states at 3:32.
Next one, another screenshot. It said, they did him so dirty, let him have his long hair. Next one is a screenshot of you today, and underneath it is your mugshot. I did as soon as they fucked him up. Oh, everybody's listening to your blonde hair. Next one, a screenshot, it says Colt's hair got chopped. Oh my God. Next one, screenshot, it says they hit the fucking Pentagon. I don't know what that means.
That means like some crazy just happened. Again.
Oh,
So,
okay, next one, says, next one, more screenshots from today. And underneath it in caps, it says, his hair, but he looks so good still. Next one, two screenshots of you today, and it says tears in my eyes.
maybe it's my long hair. Huh?
Maybe. Ooh, the next one is really cool. It has some drawings of you with your long hair. It says Colt Gray I drew a while back. Hope you like it.
Oh, yeah.
These are really cool.
Can you tell Mandy that I'm gonna grow my hair back out? I don't have to worry.
Absolutely.
Tell her that and tell everybody that I'm gonna grow it back out.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'll let her tell everybody.
So at the end of that, is he giving Marcy instructions on getting more information out to the TCC about himself?
Yes, absolutely.
I think we just spent about 45 minutes listening to call after call after call of the defendant just talking about kind of where his notoriety is within this TCC. Is this just the tip of the iceberg? Is this all they talked about every time they talked?
Yes.
Okay. Do they appear to ever get tired of talking about it?
No.
All right. So that was our last jail call. We're going to move to this final little portion or little section of the presentation. In addition to all these jail calls and the Discord records and phone notes where he's talking about being famous because of this, what other evidence was there of this motive of seeking fame and committing this mass shooting?
There were a couple memes that I added to the presentation.
Okay. Were these memes that the defendant had saved on his phone?
They were, yes.
Okay. What's this first one?
This first one is a photograph of David Hoggs, who was one of the survivors of Parkland. And he was very outspoken and became like a gun rights activist after the shooting. And the meme says, "I'd like to thank my dead classmates for giving me my dream career."
And then this final meme that was saved on his phone, what does it say?
It says, "If you do right, no one remembers. If you do wrong, no one forgets."
I don't have any further questions for you.
Cross, Mr. Allen.
Colt during this time, for 23 through 24, was 13 and 14 years old, right?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And those phone calls with his mother, she's engaging, she's interacting with him.
Yes, sir.
And she's kind of like she's encouraging him, right?
It appears so.
But now this is the same mother who a few months earlier tried to threaten him, right?
I believe so.
And you had worked on a similar kind of presentation for Colin for this trial, right?
Yes, sir, I did.
And in that one, you were juxtaposing some of his texts and some of his searches to show how his actions related to Colt's actions, right?
You're talking about Colin Gray?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And in that, you outlined the various times Colin failed to get help for Colt, right?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And how he never followed up with any of the psychological services that they had discussed.
That's correct, yes, sir.
And there were some texts where Colt was asking for some help with psychological services, right?
That's correct.
And within that, we also saw Colin had done searches for safes, but bought ammunition instead in his Google searches, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So now we've got conversations with Colt, with his mother, and they're actually interacting positively, even though it's the first time, right?
I think that's questionable, but if you say positively,
I think they're not fighting with each other, they're on the same page about these conversations.
they're not fighting, that's correct.
Actually, not threatening.
That's correct.
And even though the topic is something that they shouldn't be doing, they're still getting along.
They're interacting together, yes.
And she was not the only person that called him during that memory, was she?
No, he spoke with his grandmother as well.
Okay. And did he also speak with an aunt?
I believe a few times, yes.
And those conversations didn't have the same quality with the notoriety aspect, you getting pictures out aspect.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay. So that was only with his mom.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Fine.
All right, you should be excused.
Just a brief follow-up. Mr. Allen characterized their interactions between the defendant and Marcy as her encouraging this behavior. Would you also characterize it as it's actually the defendant who is directing Marcy on what to look up and what to find?
Yes, it appeared that he was asking her to do those things.
And is this the topic that the defendant introduced into the conversations?
Yes, it is.
And he's the one who wanted to talk about it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Anything else, Mr. Allen?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You can come down. Does the state have additional witnesses?
Mayor, I state right.
All right. State rest, why don't we go ahead and take 10 minutes and then we'll proceed with whatever the defense has.
I did have a witness that we were going to hear about soon, and I have not yet gotten a link to it.
I'm being told it was sent yesterday. If you want to step into the office, I'll put you with Mandy and we'll make sure you get it. Is that going to be the first witness?
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll set Zoom up as well.
be better here or there for the microphone?
With the state's witness, they did it at the table, but honestly, wherever the witness can hear you best, I'm fine with.
I'll try over here first.
Sir, if you'll hang tight, we'll be with you in just a minute. All right, for the record, we're all present. Mr. Allen, you can call your first witness.
This time, Judge, I would like to call Stephen Baker.
All right, so Mr. Baker, you're appearing by Zoom. Are you able to hear and see us okay?
Yes, Your
And are you able to hear me?
Honor. I can hear you, yes.
Thank you. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you please lower your hand and introduce yourself to the court?
My name is Stephen Baker. I work at the Department of Juvenile Justice as a detention counselor.
Are you familiar with Colt Gray?
I am.
How are you familiar with him?
Well, I was his case manager in the facility and primary detention counselor for about a year and a half.
Okay.
Mr. Baker, let me get you to try and speak up a little bit or increase the volume on your mic. I think I've done all I can on.
I'll move it closer and see if this help.
Helped a little bit, thank you.
Yes, and during that time, did you have a lot of occasion to interact with Colt?
I did.
Okay. Did you have like meetings once a week? How did that work out?
I had meetings at least once a week, most of the time, several times a week, 2 to 3 times a week. And it's a small place, so I would see him every day.
And as his counselor, what kinds of things would you discuss and work on with him?
Well, I'm not a mental health counselor, so primarily we would go into programming and how to do the facility and talk about social skills, life skills, things like that.
What kinds of programming was he involved with there?
Well, we had him enrolled in our skill training group, which talks about pro-social skills group. So we did that first, and he completed that. He also completed a pre-up class, which is the Prison Rape Elimination Act, federal law. We have to do a class on that for every youth that comes into the facility. So he completed that. And then he moved on to advanced skill training, and then he completed that program. He did Many Merging Two Worlds, which talks about getting jobs and prepares them for life outside the facility. We were trying to get him through all the programs we had because of the length of time he was there. So he completed that. And then after that, he was volunteer for advanced skill training, even though he'd already graduated.
And did he go into those programs cooperatively? Did he work with you folks on?
Yes, he was very cooperative.
Okay. Would you say during the time that he was there, he continued to advance in his programs?
In the programming group, yes, he did.
Okay. How was he behaviorally with the other folks in the facility?
He got along well with most of the people in the facility. Some he got along better with than others, but he was behaviorally pretty good.
Did you have any occasion to know whether or not he was involved with psychiatric services there?
Yes.
Okay. But you were not his psychologist or a psychiatrist of any fashion, right?
Correct.
Okay. So do you know whether he was compliant with his appointments when they set them up?
Yes, to my knowledge, he was compliant.
Now, at the beginning, when he first came in, to your knowledge, was he on any kind of medication?
Not to my knowledge, when he first came in, other than I believe his mother had given him something that wasn't prescribed, but other than that, you know, when he came into the facility, I don't know of any medications.
Okay. And were you aware whether or not during his time there that they prescribed him medications?
They did.
Did he confide in you as to whether or not he was compliant with taking them?
He would talk to me about it occasionally. I believe he talked more to the mental health counselor about that, the group of psychiatrists, but he did tell me that they were going to put him on medication, and then after he was on them, I would ask him, how are you feeling? And he would tell me how he was feeling, and that sort of a thing. He was basically compliant with the medications. Sometimes he would refuse to take them, but then he would start taking them again.
Did you notice any changes in his behavior from the time he was not taking them till the period that he was?
Well, he seemed to have a lot of anxiety, and when he started taking them, he seemed to calm down. But it would ebb and flow.
And can you describe what kinds of behaviors you're interpreting as anxiety?
Certainly, he would come in the office and just talk about things that were bothering him, and nervous, anxious feelings he was having, and that's what I would interpret as anxiety. He had social anxiety. He would sometimes get where he didn't want to come out and participate in programming. He would come and see me, and he would see the mental health counselor, but other programming, he just wouldn't want to get out and participate.
And during the time that he was going to the mental health counselor, was it your observations that he went on a regular basis or not?
Yes, he went on a regular basis.
Okay. And he's no longer in your facility, is that correct?
That is correct.
Do you know the reason that he was transferred to a different facility?
I don't know all the reasons. I do know that one of the reasons is because we had lost our mental health counselor, our full-time mental health counselor, maybe a couple of months before. And it was really felt that he needed a mental health counselor, someone that would come see me, but I'm not a mental health counselor. So I know that part of the idea was to move him somewhere where he could get more intensive mental health help.
While he was at your facility, did you notice or observe any kind of aggressive behaviors that he would initiate on someone else there?
No, not that he would initiate. He did sometimes become angry, but it was very rarely from my observation.
And at the times he became angry, was he able to manage that, or did you need to call somebody from the mental health facility to help him?
He was generally able to manage it. He could be talked through it.
So during the time that he was there, you said 1.5 years, approximately how many months was he on medication?
I would have no way of answering that. I know it was for at least 6 months, but other than that, I couldn't tell you. It could have been for a year, but I know it was at least 6 months.
So would it be fair to say that there were several months at the beginning that he was not on medication?
Yes.
Okay. And when he was transferred, did you have any interaction with the corresponding counselor of the new facility?
I talked to the, you're talking about when you transferred this last time.
Yes.
I talked to the, I can't recall the title, but it's not my counterpart. But it's like the person who's in charge of programming, and I talked to them and had interaction with them. Yes.
And did they indicate he was settling well in his new facility?
Yes, they did.
Okay. Do you have any concerns that he would not be continuing to do well in his new facility based on your experience with him?
No.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Judge.
Cross?
Thank you, Aaron. Mr. Baker, can you hear me?
I can.
My name is Brad Smith. I'm with the District Attorney's Office. Thank you for being with us today. When you said you were a Colts counselor, do you have a time frame of when you first met him and where was his counselor?
Yes, I believe it was around April the 9th of 2024 when I first met him.
Well, so he didn't go in until September of 2024.
Okay, then my time is off.
Do you think it was April of 25?
No, because I don't know the day that he was initially locked up, but he came to us several days after that, so he would have been early on.
Okay, so you were in his original, where he went to originally after the incident.
No, I was, without going into detail, I was in the facility he went to after he went to the original place after the incident.
Okay. And you think that was around April?
Well, obviously, I'm incorrect about the date. If that's not when it was. I'm trying to do it from memory. I know
Oh, that's fine. I'm just curious, because I know he moved around and we're trying not to, for the judges, we're trying not to name places where he is. I know he moved around from different facilities. I'm just trying to pinpoint what time frame you were involved with this.
I know that it was fairly early on after the incident that he came to us.
Okay. Did you know why he was in there? Do you know what he did that caused him to be confined?
I did.
Okay. And have you seen, I know you're on Zoom now, have you seen the state's presentation of evidence over the last 2 days?
I have seen some of it. I've read reports and I've also watched some of it.
Okay. So are you aware of the evidence we presented about communications Colt had when he was in jail after the incident?
I am.
Okay. Are the rules based on communications in and out, are they basically the same for each facility?
They are.
Okay. And would those communications, are there certain rules about them and protocols about what would be appropriate communications in and out towards the children that are in your care?
Yes.
And what would those rules be in general? I know you don't have it in front of you, but just in general, your knowledge of that.
Well, we have policy and rules on that. I mean, in general, everything the kids say, is reported. So in general, they are cautioned not to say things that would be inappropriate or that would, just things that would be inappropriate. They're cautioned not to talk about their crimes and that sort of thing.
Do you limit who they're allowed to talk to?
Yes.
And who is that? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, they can only talk to people on their approved contact list.
And would fans of school shooters be people that he would be allowed to communicate with?
Absolutely not.
Okay. And so if he were to be finding ways to get messages to those people, that would be skirting your rules, wouldn't they?
It would be.
Okay. Do they have certain rules about what is allowed physically to be brought in to the facilities?
Yes.
Okay. And is he allowed to have personal effects in his cell? Or cell's probably a bad word, a room he stays in?
He's allowed to have some items, not a lot, but they can have a few photos and a few other items, but basically what they have is what we give them, not personal things.
Okay. And these photos he is allowed to have, are they allowed to bring in offensive or violent content photos?
Absolutely not.
And do y'all generally screen for those things?
We do.
Okay. Would he be allowed, as part of your rules, to have photos of other school shooters on his walls?
No.
And how would y'all screen for that generally?
Well, if photos are brought in, they are checked by someone in security, different people that would check, but they will be sorted through and checked, and then there are room checks that go on where they will go in the room and check if contraband is in the room. So,
And
that's what,
if a person in your facility was trying to get around that and pick particular photos that wouldn't be as noticeable, would that be trying to skirt the rules?
it would be.
Okay. Were you aware of the phone calls where he had with his mother where he talked about having pictures of school shooters on his wall?
I was not aware of them until after they had happened, and he was no longer allowed to talk to his mother.
Okay. So at some point, y'all cut off the communication with his mother?
That is correct.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Thank you so much, Mr. Baker.
Mr. Allen, do you have any redirect?
Yes, Judge.
Go ahead.
Was this room screened and searched every day, or at least on a regular basis?
Mr. Allen, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sorry, I turned off the microphone. Was his room screened or searched or swept on a regular basis?
Security does a check. I'm not sure, because I'm not in security, so I don't know if they check the rooms every day. That may be so, but I know that they get checked on a regular basis.
And do you know whether or not any contraband or inappropriate pictures was found in his room?
I do not know.
Okay. And nothing was ever brought to your attention then, I guess, about them finding something in his room?
No, not that I recall.
Would it be part of the policy that if something were found in the room, they would report it to you as his counselor?
No, they would create an incident report, but that doesn't mean they can report it.
Okay. Would you be privy to the incident report?
Yes, I could look at the incident report.
Okay. And right now, do you recall any incident reports that were filed with any rule breaking or contraband in his room?
I do not.
And you had indicated that the calls with his mom were cut off. Do you remember what time range that was, after how many months he had been there?
I don't recall.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Judge.
Anything else, Mr. Moose? All right, Mr. Baker, thank you. You are free to go.
Thank you, sir.
All right, will we need Zoom anymore?
Not for me, Judge.
All right, you can call your next witness.
Your Honor, I call Candace Gross to the stand. stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please lower your hand, be seated, and introduce yourself to the court.
Hi, my name is Candace Gross, and I currently serve as the State DFACS Director and the Commissioner of the Georgia Department of Human Services.
Now, Commissioner Gross, how have you gotten involved with this case with Colt Gray?
I became involved with this case when he was placed briefly into foster care.
And do you remember approximately what time range that was?
He was placed into foster care on October 6, 2025.
And as Director of DFACS, is it normally within your purview to deal directly with the children in care?
No, I took this particular case for various reasons, but mostly due to the legal complexity of the matter, a companion case that we had, and conflicts at the local offices and state office.
Did he also have any siblings in foster care?
He does.
And how many does he have?
He has 2.
Are they a brother and sister?
They are.
Okay. Are they still in foster care?
They are.
So would it be fair to say there is a pending foster case with the Gray family?
Yes.
Okay. Does that, the dependency case, does that cover both Marcy Gray and Colin Gray?
It does.
Okay. And what were the basic allegations that brought Colt to your attention?
Colt was placed into emergency custody by a juvenile court judge in Barrow, and the concern was that his mother was violating a court order with ongoing contact by making decisions for him while in juvenile detention.
And the child who is in the custody of DJJ, what's the complexity with regard to who the actual legal custodian is?
So for that particular case, technically, my understanding was that custody was removed from the Barrow County Sheriff, but he had been detained in a juvenile detention facility, although his parents still retained their rights. So that was a big legal complexity that we had to navigate.
And at that time, why was the father not able to maintain custodianship?
Another court order that he could have no contact.
Okay. And was he also incarcerated?
Yes.
Okay. And at the time Colt came into care on October 6th, was his mother incarcerated?
I don't believe so.
Okay. With the current open DFACS case, are there any ramifications that still potentially impact Colt?
Yes, there are many.
And without belaboring the point too much, Tim, we kind of get to what are the main concerns that you and the department have regarding the Gray family, both with Colt and his brother and sister?
His parents, their parents had extensive history with our agency over several counties over the years, recent years. And we also have that open foster case with his siblings. Over the years, we've had difficulty getting compliance from the parents, but primarily from their mother. And that is a big issue right now in the foster care case.
And you said there's extensive history. Does that history mean that the children were brought into foster care previously?
No, they weren't, but we had involvement in that. We had to make safety plans, service referrals, accommodations with what parents could actually provide, caregiving capacity based on the allegations at the time.
And in your capacity as director, do you have access to that history and all those files?
I do.
What kinds of parenting issues involving Colt, as well as the others, were raised in some of those files?
So some of the earliest information we had concerned truancy, physical abuse, substance abuse, domestic violence, verbal abuse, inadequate supervision. I mean, there's a plethora of issues that we've encountered over the years with the family.
And in your review of the cases, were there any indications that any of the children needed like psychological counseling, therapeutic support?
Yes.
Are you able to describe any of that? Especially with regard to Colt?
Yes. If you'll give me just a second, I'm pausing in part just to make sure there's certain things that I keep confidential but properly describe it. There were concerns involving Colt's behavior at school. And there were, not too long after that, there were concerns raised about physical abuse by specifically their mother, involving Colt specifically. And that was an investigation that we formally opened, that across a few months we talked to various people, family members, the children, and we made a safety plan with some referrals for services for like therapy, if I recall correctly. And to the best of my recollection, the family did not follow up with those. So what we had done in that particular case is, once we did our investigation, we closed it, but we had those referrals made out to designated service providers. And what we expected is that with non-compliance, we would hear back. That did not end up being the case, although we still would have we'd have additional reports not long after that.
The parents were married, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did any of those investigations end up with an agreement that Colin was going to take custody of the children?
Yes. We had a case that went from a formal investigation to what I believe is a family preservation case, but essentially the way that it worked is we looked into allegations of domestic violence, substance abuse issues, that the children had been locked out of the home, physical abuse targeted at Colt, some verbal abuse, and that case ran from November of 2022 to, I believe, the end of October 2023. And at the end of that case is where, because of several failed drug screens by the mother, and essentially corroboration to an extent by collateral sources that the children were facing abuse, but Colt in particular, that's when we went ahead and placed the children with the father since he retained his legal rights. We try to avoid foster care if we can, if we don't have identified issues with a parent that, is able to take care of them, which is what our assessment was.
Now, as a frame of reference, can you outline for the court how a general investigation of that nature would take place? How it would go from an investigation to family preservation to a custody agreement?
Generally, what happens with any defects case is that we're going to get a report that alleges child abuse or neglect. It'll be specific types that that serves as the basis of what we investigate. If we actually have enough information to assign it for investigation, that's what a lot of people understand to be like child protective services. We'll do that investigation I think we generally try to complete it within 45 days. Sometimes it can run longer, but what we're looking for is anything to substantiate the allegations of abuse. And we talk to the children, we talk to anyone else involved in their lives, we look at records, that kind of thing. We will unsubstantiate or substantiate the claims, and then at that point is when we decide if we need to stay involved or if we can safely close the case. In this particular matter, after we determined that there were still ongoing safety issues, we moved the case to that family preservation services type that I described, and that's when we're trying to deploy interventions that can mitigate ongoing safety concerns.
How do you determine if allegations are substantiated or unsubstantiated?
It's going to be a combination of sources. So we're going to look, we use a preponderance of the evidence standard, but what we're looking at is information that we gather from the children, from family members, from parents, records, like school records, medical records, different types of interviews and written sources to look at that and see if it meets the standards of the allegations that were made, but we may also uncover new allegations that based on the evidence we end up substantiating.
And does substantiation necessarily mean it gets into court?
No.
Okay. So in this case, you're talking about in 2023, Colin got custody of all 3 children?
I wouldn't describe it as him getting custody necessarily because he still technically had it as they were married. I think they remained married. I could be mistaken. But what we did was we worked out a plan where the children would be with him and he would be expected to limit contact, prohibit contact essentially.
In a case like that, would the department do follow-up visits with in this case, the father, if the safety plan was for him to maintain custody and limit mom?
We would. Now we would generally be looking for some information that indicates noncompliance. But what we often struggle with different families is like transients moving places, or a parent may have been compliant and become non-compliant, so we can't find them. So there are always a lot of factors that go into trying to follow up in general with a family.
How does a change of jurisdiction, say from one county to another, how does that impact your ability to maintain any kind of follow-up?
Well, in that particular case, we actually had what I would describe as like dueling county involvement. So at times we'd have Jackson County DFACS checking, we'd have Ben Hill County DFACS checking, but and technically all of our staff have got access to the same system, so we can see records regardless of where the family may be located at that time. But if we don't know where they've gone and we can't seem to find a credible source of it, then we really get stuck unless we can find, a neighbor that tells us where they've gone, or a family member, something like that, that could give us a new lead.
And you mentioned Ben Hill County. Is that where this particular case started?
I believe that it did, yes.
And following up with Jackson County, did DFACS or your office have any irregularities that they were concerned about after 2023?
Can you say that one more time?
Did your office in Jackson County have any irregularities or issues that they were concerned about following the children going up with dad in 2023?
I can't readily recall anything. I think that because we had done pretty extensive work with the family, and we had this understanding that their father would continue to be making caregiving decisions, that's when we felt like it was safe to close the case. We hadn't gotten any reports. I don't believe we'd gotten another report for the lifetime of that case, in fact, and that ran from, again, November 2022 to, I think, when we closed it technically on Halloween 2023.
Okay. And the case then that brought Colt into care on October of 2025, was there an open DFACS investigation on the other children prior to him being involved in it?
Yes.
And how did that happen?
The children came into foster care at our request on September 5th, 2024.
So was it directly related to the shooting at the school?
It was, but also because of the prior history of the family, it became pretty clear to us very quickly that the mother was still very involved in their lives, and the severity of the issue meant that we went ahead and requested custody. We also couldn't, we didn't feel that we could vet alternatives to foster care, like family members and others, quickly enough. And there were some concerns, so we went ahead and requested emergency foster care.
And that was a month before you brought Colt in?
No, so his siblings entered foster care September 5th, 2024, and then Colt was placed in foster care October 6th, 2025.
Okay, so that was over a year.
Yes.
Okay. And in that intervening year, did your department have investigations ongoing that raised concerns to you regarding both those children and Colt?
Yes.
And what kind of concerns were those?
There were various concerns. There were concerns about inadequate supervision, inadequate, food, shelter, medical care for all of the children, educational neglect, ongoing substance abuse, in particular by their mother, threats that she made against Colt in particular. There was a significant amount of concern that we had to look into.
And at that time that you brought the other children into care, was the department aware that Colt was in DJJ custody?
Yes.
Okay. Was the department aware that Colt and his mom were having regular communications during that time?
Yes, we were.
How were you made aware of that?
I believe it was a combination of information from perhaps Colt's counsel or guardian, perhaps as actually a guardian ad litem, that had been getting reports of his mother's contact with him in the facility and concerns about the content of some of their calls in particular. I don't know that I've adequately answered your question, but I remember that being a huge issue going into his removal into foster care.
And did the department have a position on whether or not contact should be maintained between mom and Colt?
At our position, at minimum, was that she was expected to comply with the court order, and I believe the court had issued a no contact order between her and Colt in early July 2025, maybe end of June, somewhere around that time. There were concerns then about the calls that were being made, the content. Colt was not doing well. And there were concerns about her involvement, pushing him toward an inability to progress in some of his care at the facility.
And when you became his temporary custodians, did the department get access to information from DJJ on his medical and mental health issues?
Yes, we did.
What kinds of mental health challenges did they communicate to you that he was having?
The records were pretty extensive that they provided to me to review. So what I could see was that from essentially intake when he arrived for detention, he was getting workups. He's being fully evaluated for general health concerns, vision, like a well check, dental care, and then mental health needs. And that's where, not too long after intake, like within a few days after intake, he was describing what he said he believed were undiagnosed mental health issues, and talking about, some of the prior things he's experienced, things that he was experiencing then, suicidal ideation, self-harm. And that the self-harm too was pretty quickly documented in the records. They could see that he.
And normally for children who are in care, is DFACS responsible for making sure they get appropriate mental health as well as physical,
Yes,
medical issues taken care of?
yes.
And would that mean that you and your department and DJJ would need to interface to make sure for your responsibility that all that was being complied with?
Yes, and we did.
And during your review of the information that you got from DJJ at that time, were you able to determine whether or not appropriate measures were being taken for his mental health?
I was able to make that determination. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, even though he entered foster care, and that was really also when I was trying to do my initial safety assessment, that's a component. I was doing these things at the same time. I also was asking basically any healthcare facility I could think of under the sun if they had any records involving Colt, because I couldn't really get great leads on where he'd gotten care. He was telling me he hadn't gotten anything except for maybe an eye check. He didn't recall going to any doctors over the course of his life. So I was sending those requests out, and I was also collaborating with DJJ staff to look at what they had.
And did you find anything that suggested that he had appropriate private medical care prior to coming into DJJ?
No. I was really surprised by the complete absence of care, because you normally don't see that. I mean, even with some families that struggle, you'll still see that maybe they've been to the pediatrician, prior years, but I wasn't really getting any luck there.
And during this time that he was in your care, what kinds of other investigations were done by the department to determine what the family life and family structure was like?
So I needed to talk to several family members, so I did. I talked to his grandmother, I talked to paternal aunts, I talked to a maternal aunt, I talked to the clinical team at the facility, the educational team, administrative staff. I reviewed all those records, and I was trying to discern, I was trying to discern, essentially whether he was safe there and was getting adequate care. And so I was looking at, what they had in their records at that time for diagnoses, treatment, any behavioral incidents, all of that stuff together.
Now, when you're assessing a case for safety, particularly with regard to medical, does the department take into consideration things like failure to provide treatment, failure to provide medical or counseling services if the child looks like they need it, failure to do dental and eye exams? Do they take that into account when they're determining what is neglect and abuse?
Yes. Those are, we have various categories of child maltreatment, and generally they're going to fall into, abuse, neglect, or other. And so what I was looking at is all of that information together and trying to separate them out into whether I had enough, I'd met with the evidence, the preponderance of the evidence standard for those different categories. And I ultimately did end up making several substantiations on both parents involving Colt.
And what, if you can, what were the categories of those substantiations?
So for his father, and again, this is focused on Colt, in my case, for his father, I believe there were 11 categories that I recently substantiated for child abuse and neglect. And I'm going to make sure I get all this. So inadequate supervision, inadequate food, shelter, medical care, educational neglect, domestic violence, lack of psychological care. Let's see. There's a category for gunshot in our maltreatment codes, and that describes if a parent fails to adequately secure a weapon and it discharges. There were many poisoning. That's one that I substantiated on the father and mother. But overall, across those, and I would have to look at my notes to remember all of them. But I believe Colin had 11 different categories across abuse, neglect, and other. Imminent risk of harm is the other category. That's where if they fail to comply with prior cases and now the children are in harm's way. Marcy actually, I think, had 12 substantiations, so more than Colin. And the reason for that is that I found enough evidence that she was physically abusing him. There were several sources that got into detail about how he was the target of her ire for various reasons over the years. That's not to say there weren't allegations against their father for also physically abusing Colt, but I couldn't find evidence of like marks and bruises like I did involving mother and Colt.
Now, part of, as I understand it, the case manager's job is to go out and see the child as well as work with the parents. Did you ever go out and visit Colt?
I did.
Okay. How many times, do you recall?
I don't. We have to do monthly visits. Just depending on when it was, I would do monthly, sometimes twice. I think for the month of November, I ended up that my visit was like at the tail end of October and then beginning of December. So I didn't technically see him in November, but we also would talk on the phone and I would stay in contact with with the staff there to make sure that he was doing well.
Did his brother and sister have a separate case manager?
Yes.
Okay. And just to reaffirm, you're not specifically a case manager, you were just performing a case manager role because of the complexity of the case?
Yes.
Okay. And during your visits and conversations with Colt, did you ever get a handle on, from him and or from DJJ, what they were doing to address his mental health needs?
I did. They would describe in the records, I could look at how his evaluations and diagnoses changed over time along with the medication. I could see where symptoms would wax and wane. I heard from Colt too about what he was experiencing. So I would ask him, generally, do you feel safe here? Is there anything you want to tell me? And let it be sort of led by him. Some concerns that I heard were that he was having a hard time sleeping. There were several self-harm incidents. They would adjust his medication. But the best I can tell from the records, I think that he arrived in September of 2024 and for several months didn't have medication. They were still doing a lot of evaluation, but he was describing what he was experiencing and seeing or hearing, anxiety. At times he would say mania or psychosis, and they would adjust accordingly.
And did the records reflect any improvement in his behaviors while he was being treated?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have an occasion to talk to the personnel at the YDCs?
I did.
And did they also reflect that he had improved while he was on medication?
They did. And one of my earliest notes, I think this was in fact my first visit to see him on, I think it was October 8th of 2025. The staff said that, so I had my meeting with him, I then met for some time with staff, and my takeaway, which I have in my notes, is that they believed that the no contact order that had been effectuated against his mother, again in July, I believe, of that year, combined with the start of medication, those two things together had changed him into essentially a different child. He was sleeping better, he was eating. I believe it was that time that he went from losing a lot of weight because he thought he was being poisoned to starting to eat more. And they felt like no contact and medication is what the difference maker was. They believed that his mother was fueling this like ongoing obsession with school shooters, and that then seemed to change direction for him. He started participating more in a lot of other positive improvements.
Now, Colt during this time was 14 and 15 years old, right?
Yes.
I mean, with your experience with DFACS, is that a critical time for children in their development?
I'm not an expert in that area. Primarily, I'm an administrator of the agency, but I have been in charge of DFACS now for 5 years, and that, especially for younger boys, is a really important time in their lives. And we are concerned about more and more reports and investigations where teenage kids are exposed to awful things online.
Now, when you had your meetings with Colt, did he talk to you about wanting to have contact with his mother?
Yes.
What was his position on that?
He misses her, and he still misses her.
Is it the department's position that it's in his best interest to maintain the suspended contact?
I don't think that it's in his best interest for her to have contact, but I can tell that he desperately misses his mother.
Okay. During this time also that he was in your care, were steps taken by the department to initiate any kind of psychological evaluations for him?
Typically, we will we'll try to coordinate at the start of foster care that the child receive a trauma assessment, which they get through Medicaid, all children in foster care on Medicaid, and a CCFA, which I think is like a comprehensive child and family assessment. I was not able to do those for a couple main reasons. He had gotten an extensive workup to evaluate trauma, is the response I got back from his clinical team. They didn't really want to have off-site contracted providers coming in-house to do that work. And, I wanted to respect the process. I didn't have a case to compare it to either. So, I wanted to just do my best with what we could.
And so you weren't able to get any independent evaluations?
No, but based on what I had heard from family members and others, there were some things I would have wanted to get checked. He had some very early school records that indicated it was either a 504 or an IEP with some concerning behaviors, and I wondered if he needed to be evaluated for autism spectrum disorder and some other things.
Did you, in your investigation, come across information that indicated that prior to shooting, Colt had tried to get help from his family?
I did. His mother had been giving him Zoloft. So, when I talked to family members and him and even his siblings, something that seems pretty consistent, that there was knowledge about how much difficulty he was experiencing. The inconsistencies were more about who knew what, when, and that's what the status was leading up to September 4th.
And though he was not brought into care before the shooting, had those concerns been raised to you after Colin and the family moved up to Jackson, would the department have initiated a new investigation?
Say that one more time.
Though he was not brought into care until after the shooting, had those concerns about his call wanting to get some help and the inconsistencies as to who knew what when, would that have been enough to raise concerns to the department to begin an investigation in Jackson County?
I believe it would have been.
And when, while he was at the YDC, were you familiar with what his diagnosis was?
Yes.
And what can you tell us about that? Obviously, if it goes into confidence areas that you can't divulge, but what can you tell us about that?
So my best recollection is, and this is like several hundred pages worth of documents, so bear with me, but that he came in, he did extensive screenings at intake. There was pretty regular involvement with like clinical review for the symptoms he was raising. There were some self-harm incidents. He was getting therapy, but I think it was the summer of 2025 when he, best I can tell is when he started taking medication. And then there was consideration for generalized anxiety disorder, PTSD. At some point there was social conduct disorder. I don't believe that's still a diagnosis, or wasn't at the conclusion of my investigation on that limited record set. There was considerations for malingering that I believe got phased out. And he was telling staff that he had.
Your Honor, I'm gonna politely object. I don't think there's anything untoward going on, but you already had a forensic psychologist that forensically went through all these things for this purpose and had a detailed report that is presented to the court about all these things. She seems to be trying to go more as a layperson, reading these reports, trying to remember them. I believe it could be confusing in that this has already been presented in a more forensic, professional way, not taken back from her, but like she's trying to remember what she read, whereas the other witness was there. I think because it's the same thing, it's just confusing.
And as part of her investigation, and this goes to some of the conclusions that she's going to make with regarding the rest of the family going forward in the case, even though we will reach a point at which Colt will be removed from foster care.
So obviously, the doctor that testified earlier had the background. He was admitted as an expert to go into those things. I recall his testimony and have extensive notes from it. I'm going to allow her some leeway to testify, but I realize she is just recounting what she's read in reports and that she's not a mental health expert.
Thank you, Judge. Okay. So again, you can go ahead and complete your understanding of what his diagnosis was relative to your investigation.
It changed over the course of their evaluations. So, he had reported some family history too of diagnoses like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. And so there's some notes about that throughout.
Mm-hmm. What happened with Colt's position as foster child? Well, he was in RYDC. What happened after that?
He was essentially in the dependency case in juvenile court. The parties worked out a compromise, if you will, where instead of either parent being involved in his day-to-day decision-making, that we believed that his maternal grandmother could do that in lieu of foster care.
Okay. So was she given some kind of custody through the foster care
The judge permitted her to effectuate a legal document. I can't recall if it's like power of attorney or guardianship, but something akin to that with the mother.
So at some point then, his case was closed with DFACS, is that right?
His foster care case was closed. The investigative part, looking into the allegations of abuse and neglect, has continued. It's still technically open.
Since that's still technically open, does the department have a direction that they're going with that?
Now that I have made substantiations against his parents, my plan is then to just formally work through the administrative process of closing out the case. If there were new reports that we got, then, that could extend it. That's not uncommon either, but that's the status right now.
So then, at that point, then officially, DFACS connection with Colt will be ended once you close that portion of the case?
Yes.
Okay. As you reach your conclusion, would it be the department's position that it's in Colt's best interest to remain not having much contact with his family until his legal position is resolved?
Right now, I wouldn't recommend that he has contact with his parents, although if there was some way that there could be appropriate supervision between he and his mother, then I would consider it because of his wishes that he's indicated recently.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Judge.
Cross, Mr. Smith.
Hey, Mr. Price, I'm Brad Smith of the District Attorney's Office. So just for clarification, when you say Colt's in foster care, that's more of a legal designation. He's not gone anywhere. He stayed in the detention center the entire time.
That's right.
Okay.
And he's not currently in foster care.
Right, okay. And that's a legal definition for like if someone needs to sign medical things and directives kind of stuff.
Yes, that can be a basis for it.
Okay. And you were talking about his mental health issues. Were you following the court's or the state's presentation of evidence over the last 2 days?
Yes.
Okay. So you're aware that all of the mental health experts that he dealt with at the facility had found that he was malingering and not truthful about his symptoms?
An earlier clinician did. My understanding was that at some point malingering fell off as a diagnosis. I don't know what the current status is.
Right. So the first, I think it was Dr. Dupree, his first psychiatrist. They did testing and found out, and she suspected that he was malingering. They actually did tests on him that confirmed he was malingering. He was turned over to Dr. Ackerman, which is a psychologist. He followed him, and all this time he's not being medicated for anything. And he found where he was malingering. And then he then said, we're going to take away the malingering because he's not saying he has psychotic symptoms at this point. And then he was turned over to another psychiatrist, Dr. Freeman, I believe.
Judge, is there a question here? It seems like Mr. Smith is on to the moment.
Correct? Or do you not remember?
I don't know that I completely agree with that. Admitting though that I'm not a clinician, so no, I mean, I did see that at some point there was a malingering suspicion. I think it was a diagnosis code in some of the earlier records, but then that it was removed.
Dr. Ackerman removed it.
That's right, and in some of my interactions with Dr. Ackerman and Dr. Freeman, they indicated that would happen, that they were trying to either rule it in or rule it out, and they thought it might in fact be ruled out. But that's a limited set of time that I was involved.
But the only time that it was in the records that it was ruled out was Dr. Ackerman. And then later on, Dr. Freeman found instances of him malingering to her, or him. Excuse me.
I don't know what was beyond that data set or
And it
record
was
set.
after that he was interviewed by his psychologist, Dr. Richards,
Okay.
and given tests when was malingering then too.
I haven't been in, I don't know what's in any of those reports.
So we've had 2 other doctors saying he was malingering after that Dr. Ackerman took off the malingering evaluations.
I believe you. I don't know. I wasn't involved in that process.
Well, I was you told the judge that the malingering had been taken off, and I just want to point out that that's not correct.
I understand. I'm sorry. My time was limited to a specific data set, and I just recall that being something that fell off as a diagnosis.
Okay, so let's go back to DFAC's first involvement with the case. That was started in August of 2021.
That was I believe the first report that we received on the family.
And that was on Colt had researched how to kill your dad on the school computer.
Yes,
And he would have been in 6th grade at the time.
I believe so.
So the first report had nothing to do with Marcy or Colin doing anything to Colt.
Not that I recall offhand.
And then the next report was in February 1st of 2022, so a few months later. And that report was that Colt was not enrolled in school.
I believe the next report was one alleging physical abuse by Ms. Gray.
Okay, so that would have been between the August and the February one?
We had the initial August report that you described. We had a report that alleged physical abuse involving Colt, and then we had I believe it was in sort of back to back. We had reports about truancy for all the children,
Okay.
January, February, I'm sorry.
Okay, so between the August of 21 and February 22, around that area is when you had the physical abuse.
Yes, sir.
And that was Marcy, and it was specifically that she slapped Colt, correct?
It was, yes, that she slapped him and that he had like a swollen lip.
Okay. And then, so then you had, in February, you had, all the kids weren't enrolled in school, but Colt specifically.
I believe the report it had for all the children being that they were excessively truant. It was like over 20 days for each child.
And then the next report came in, that was February, the next report came in that November,
Yes.
and that was Marcy being intoxicated.
It was several allegations that I think was probably the primary one is substance abuse. But there were also concerns about the children's hygiene at school. The parents arguing like domestic violence allegations, that type of stuff.
And the domestic violence was between the parents with each other.
Yes.
And then fast forward a whole year to October of 2023 is the next issue. And that is Marcy test positive for drugs.
That case, I think what you're saying is that case ran from November 2022, right, to basically October, the end of October the following year.
Right.
And that's because of a failed drug screen, one of a few, in fact, but
Right.
yeah,
And then, so that was October, y'all gave the kids to the father,
yes,
and then the case was closed on October 31st, 2023.
yes.
So what we have here, the allegations are truancy, hygiene, and mom's using drugs. And there was one incident in 6th grade where mom slapped him.
There was, for the case that involved the allegations of physical abuse involving mom and Colt, it was more than one occasion of the allegations of hitting, but that was a very short case compared to the November 2022 to October 2023.
And that was back when he was in 6th grade.
I believe so, yes.
So in 2021 was allegation of mom physical abuse with him.
Yes.
But all you have substantiated is a slapping with the lip.
And in fact, it wasn't substantiated. We had contradictory accounts from the children.
So that was not substantiated.
It wasn't, the children had different versions.
Okay. Now, you said, you testified on the direct that new things categories have been recently substantiated.
Mhm.
What do you mean by recently substantiated?
So a DFACS investigation per policy, I think is supposed to be completed within 45 days. It can run longer. It just depends on the case. Often if you have history with a family, then you're not often, you have to look at all of that. And then if the current issue that you're investigating has multiple allegations, it can run longer. And in fact, mine did. So my substantiations were across multiple categories. And then I issued official notice, I think it was last Wednesday.
Last Wednesday.
Yes, sir.
And when did you agree when was it agreed that you would be a witness in this case?
I think that we had talked about it leading up to the start of this. I mean, I kind of expected a subpoena, so I've been preparing one way or another. And I knew coming that I could be called, but he asked if I would be here.
Okay. So what I'm asking is, what came first? You knowing you were going to testify, or you substantiating these new claims?
Oh, I substantiated first. I didn't.
Last Wednesday.
Yes.
Okay. And you said there were several sources for these new claims. What were the several sources?
Record review, interviews with different people, children, family members, other people that are involved in the children's lives.
Okay. So these several sources are Colt's family members.
Not just that, I mean, it could be the guardian ad litem that is assigned to any of the kids. In fact, it was. And then I'm trying to make sure I cover everybody that I've talked to. DJJ staff, I mean, so it wasn't just family members, but that's generally the universe of what I recall.
Process of substantiation, how long are we talking about where these sources came forward with these new claims?
Oh, I mean, they're not necessarily new. It's just that I was trying to make sure that I did a thorough investigation into each of them, and it was just significant review of materials.
Was it before or after Colt decided he was going to plead guilty and y'all knew there was going to be a sentencing hearing?
I didn't know what his goal was going to be for court.
Okay. I want to ask general broad questions about DFACS and what y'all do, and thank you for what y'all do. How many children approximately does DFACS monitor for homelessness?
If you mean for open investigations that we have for homelessness,
Monitoring the children.
oh, I don't know what you mean by monitor. I mean, we probably get several hundred thousand, maybe a couple thousand. That's almost pure speculation on my part right now about reports that have that allegation is one or many. But generally, we're not going to be investigating homelessness. We try to differentiate between like a poverty issue versus, actual abuse or neglect.
What about malnourishment?
I don't know the number offhand, but I mean, if it's also sort of a sliding scale to try to determine if it rises to the level of abuse or if it's neglect, abuse, or poverty. And so we'll be looking at prior history. We'll look at what collateral sources tell us as part of the initial safety assessment if we get a report that makes that allegation.
And how many investigations do you think in a year are for allegations of severe beatings to children?
The majority of the reports that we get in any given year are going to include an allegation of neglect. It's going to be primarily neglect in basically every county in terms of number of reports. For physical abuse, I can't recall where it falls in the, like top 5, but I could probably get that information for you. We have it publicly posted.
We're talking hundreds, thousands?
Probably thousands. We get, I think last year we opened several thousand cases in general. I mean, so they would fall within those.
Same general idea about how many do y'all get referrals for children that had intentionally broken bones by their caregivers?
In what I would describe as more non-accidental trauma cases, then that's going to be a much smaller category. I don't know that we're even talking hundreds per year.
Okay. How about strangulation?
I don't know that number offhand. That's going to be a much smaller category.
Intentional burns?
I don't know that number offhand, but I think based on my anecdotal recall of our cases per year, it's going to be higher than an allegation of strangulation or non-accidental trauma.
How about sexual abuse?
It's going to be a pretty recurrent allegation that we get.
That's a pretty large number, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
How about rape specifically?
We categorize it as more sexual abuse or sexual exploitation. That's the maltreatment codes that we would use. So we don't refer to it as rape unless we've done the investigation and we have enough evidence to indicate that in fact occurred.
And the last is probably another subset is like child sex trafficking. Y'all get investigations for that?
We do.
How many do you think you get that in a year?
Several hundred, maybe we're looking at 1,000 to 2,000. It's been going up in recent years.
So to sum up, Colt had a less than ideal upbringing in childhood.
Yes.
But also to sum up, we've seen worse. Haven't we?
I think that's fair, but child abuse or maltreatment in general is something we just want to try to avoid or work with the children to address the trauma.
I agree. Thank you.
Can you redirect?
In the context of intensity to a child, does it matter if they were abused by their parent by slapping in the face or having their arm broken? In their view, does it matter?
Rejecting our calls for speculation.
So she works with an agency that has to make these determinations all the time and when they're working to reunify.
No calls for speculation.
I'll sustain it. I think slapping in the face is not as bad as intentionally breaking a bone, but got another question.
Within the context of DFAC's policy, you don't really monitor cases, do you? You get them on referral?
Correct.
No. So your resources with the department don't allow you to track every child or every circumstance that exists in the state of Georgia, right?
That's right. We rely on reports.
Okay. Is it reasonable to believe that not all cases that have severe abuse are reported?
Can you say that one more time?
Is it reasonable to assume that not all cases that have severe abuse are reported to DFACs?
Yes, it's reasonable. We often will find out later.
And when you get a referral and a report, do you have a legal obligation to follow through and make sure, whatever the intensity of the allegation, that the case is investigated?
Yes, and we have extensive policies that help guide case managers on what they should do based on the maltreatment codes alleged.
And is there a policy on how you handle families who have recurring referrals to DFACs?
There are several policies that apply, yes.
So if a family has more referrals than, say, the standard, which may be one time over spanking a child, about several things, and it may not be severe each one. How do your policies interpret the way you approach that fact?
We review all of the records that we have, including just reports, including if we did an investigation, what that is, all the different case types that we would have worked. And then we view them together to determine if there's like chronicity, if the severity of the claims, all of those. So it can be very discretionary, but that's why we have DFAC's policy that helps guide case managers.
And would recurring referrals raise more red flags than a single referral?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all that.
Ma'am, do you mind spelling your last name for the court reporter?
Yes, it's BROCE.
Thank you. You're free to go. Mr. Allen?
Judge, I have one more witness. I don't know if the court wants to break it out for lunch, or this witness, I don't know. I'm not sure how long it's going to take.
Do you think she's one, or he or she would be one before? I mean, we get done by 12 with them, or do you think they're going to be on the stand for an hour or two?
It's not going to be an hour or two, but I don't think we'll be done by 12.
Okay. Would you like to break now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and take a lunch recess. Be back at 12:50.
Thank you, Judge.
Counsel?
Yeah, just somebody.
Okay.